Hello, boys. How's everything going?
Doing
Garrett,
great. How you
Joe.
doing?
I don't know. I swear to God, it's like another Monday. Every Monday is another Monday.
Well, today's Tuesday, so you should check your calendar.
I know,
Or
but
is
it
it
feels
Monday
like
again?
Monday. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Every Monday is a Monday.
That just happened at Super Bowl Sunday. It was Groundhog Day. It was a beautiful time for them to roll out that Jeep commercial.
Ugh, I do feel like I'm like that right now. Oh man. Well, good to see everyone. I think we wanted to talk a little bit about Authority Labs today, right?
Yeah. Let's
Get
talk Authority
some.
Labs, SEO and data.
It's funny. Joe is just as familiar as I am with Authority Labs, but like in the past, like we've used you guys numerous times while I was at GoDaddy, and specifically before you guys was having problems with trying to gather all the rank data that we needed to get for some of our long tail keywords, and it was such a pain to try to get that stuff. So I'm happy to have you guys on today. I'm happy to be here, and I know me and Joe probably have a ton of war stories that we could go over. So maybe we'll do that, and we can talk about maybe the new featured snippet stuff that's coming out and how people are freaking out. They're freaking out like there's no tomorrow. So we can talk about some of that stuff too, and how you guys will be at Advanced Search Summit not that far from now, probably April 22nd to the 24th, maybe.
How's
Maybe.
planning going? Are you ready?
No.
No, I think we're more ready this year than we were the previous year. So because it's turnkey now.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's turnkey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a heck of a lot easier than DC. How about that?
That is true. Well, cool. Let's talk about some stuff. I started off over at GoDaddy long time ago, and I had to get. I think at the time it was like advanced web ranking.
Yeah,
It was like
AWR.
it was the only tool that was out there, and I was like pulling stuff, and I was like, oh, I got 100 keywords. This is great. And then I started like counting up more keywords and more keywords and more keywords. And then all of a sudden, like I started to get the Google screen of death of like, sorry, you've been doing too many searches today. We're just going to have to shut you down for a little bit. And I was just like, man, what am I going to do? Like, this is not good. Like, I need this keyword data as quickly as I can get it. And, even AWR was pretty slow at the time because, it was just your computer trying to get all of the data. So it was really, really challenging. So, it's nice that something like Authority Labs exists and that we can get accurate rank data very, very quickly. But yeah, I went through, it seemed like a nightmare for months trying to get all of that data. And and then it was always delayed too. So it's like, okay, well, this is a couple weeks old, or this is, a month old. Well, it's going to take me another week or something to go run 1,000 keywords or 100,000 keywords. So it's cool that you guys can do that today. It's actually far beyond the expectations of someone who was around, 7 or 8 years ago. So it's cool.
Yeah, so AWR, I know we used it for many years. Even before that, we were on Web Position Gold. I remember we'd have to kick off the process on like Friday evening and then come back Monday to make sure, like, did we get all the ranks we need to check? And that wasn't even that many because, like you, it was several hundred. It wasn't like several 100,000.
Right.
And then, of course, we ran into that limitation. AWR had the desktop version, which got clunkier and problematic. They went to cloud and they kind of flopped a bit. And I think that's when Authority Labs took off.
Yeah.
You guys kind of figured it out. I just remember like what a pain it was. Same thing. We were trying to do internal scoring and internal tracking. We were running into the IP issues. We call it Joe Bot. It was like Joe triggered the fucking bot again. Sorry for those podcast members offended by poor language.
Podcast potty mouth.
Yeah, it really wasn't until we went to your distributed method because we were trying to build like a financial search engine at that point in time. It was like, well, we need to now track, not only thousands of keywords, we need to track all the links, data coming into them, and all those associated rankings. And this got to be this big, unmanageable thing on our end. It was like, how much is it per pull? Okay, let's just do that.
Well, how manual was it? Like, how organized did you guys have to be to not just lose track of everything that you're doing in the first place?
Oh, no, we lost track.
We're pretty technical. So like, we knew what we needed to track. That wasn't a difficulty for us. But we were running it into an issue of like, the jobbing aspect of like, you have the worker processes that need to run and then feed the data back. And there's just, it wouldn't get done, or it'd be super delayed, or things would die. And so like now I love the fact that we live in a world where we could spin all this stuff up on AWS and then like, grab the data pools, pull it back in, kill the process, done. Like now I weep for the future that never had to walk uphill the snow both ways like we did in SEO. It's like, it's so much easier now that like you guys are spoiled.
Yeah. Well, I remember like pulling stuff for hours and hours and hours on end, and then all of a sudden like there'd be like something happened to my computer, and then like the process stopped, and I was like, shit, now I gotta go do this all over again. Are you kidding me? And it would inevitably happen, right? Because it wasn't my computer, it was the computer over at GoDaddy, and they weren't the greatest things ever. Do like a cheap Dell or something like that. And inevitably it would happen on one of the runs, and you were just so frustrated because you got like maybe a quarter of what you wanted, and you're like, well, I gotta go do this again. It just sucks.
Also, like when you first like started going to the cloud, started using IPs. Well, we tried to use the IPs that we're using like for our general proxy stuff, and our general proxy stuff was not always in the US, so our results would get really wild. We'd be like, wow, we're at number 1. No, now we're out of the top 100. Oh, now we're out of the top 1,000. It's just be gone. That was kind of problematic. I know personalization really made things difficult too, where it was nice being able to have the rapid pulls and doing it frequently enough to where when clients had positional queries, where are we ranking, it's able to spin it up that much faster and get them the reports. I know we tried to do like real-time stuff without like, let me Google this for you sort of thing. Because like the personalization ruins it for them. It was nice just being able to have the dashboards and pulling the data from the dashboards. I know AuthorityLabs is much bigger than that now, especially for enterprises. But like back in the day, that was a nice little game changer for us to be able to report on.
Yeah, I think too, like the enterprise customer is getting a lot more intelligent. Like I remember, like it's actually kind of funny because it's doing like this 360 thing where it's like in the beginning you just wanted the data, and then like all of these platforms got created. So then you had the platform with the data, but you had like all of the stuff in the platform, and you couldn't really take it out unless you wanted to like, just export the data or whatnot. But like, it seems like there was a lot of limiting factors to it. And that's kind of like the nice thing I like about AuthorityLabs is that we've got the API where you can just pull the data and feed it into like whatever you want. Like, what is your dashboard? And I think that like for me, if I was to go back into like an enterprise entity, like I would definitely want the data, but I would absolutely want to have my own platform in order to like gather the data the way that I need it.
Mm-hmm.
And like with GoDaddy, man, in the beginning, it would have been perfect too, because they had their own analytics platform that they had built, and it didn't connect to anything at all. And so one of the things that we could have done back then was to easily just import through the API into that system, which would have made my life a lot easier now that I'm thinking about it. But, it's things like that I think give people the freedom of, using the data how they want. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. Like one of the things that we do a lot here at Blush is we do keyword research data to try to figure out an ROI model for keywords. And so one of the things that you could potentially do with something like AuthorityLabs is you could take all of the positional data, you could take all of the keywords that you're ranking for, and then mirror those to all of the URLs that you're targeting, and you could essentially come up with a live click curve that will give you the ROI modeling on all of your data. Like mind blowing to have something like that, like in real time. Like you could literally run it in real time. And now that I think about it, maybe I should do that.
I'm running into something like not necessarily the same thing, but kind of similar. So like Intellifluence, we're at about 75,000 influencers now. And naturally, we want to rank for everyone's name, but that's a lot of pages. And so we try to figure out like, well, whose name should we be ranking for? And the best way to do that is to try to like pair, the value. So we have like some SPY food data and whatnot, but then we need to understand like, well, where are we ranking for everyone? And then it's like from that basis, like, are we ranking for people that are on the top of page 2 that are, that don't yet have links pointed to their page? If so, then we're going to start prioritizing link building towards that stuff and just keep piling up easy wins. Like, I don't know why, like, people still chase just the head term. I get it. Like, the head term is pretty and it's an ego thing. But there's so much value in us just ranking for some person that gets 500 searches a month for their name, and some brand wants to work with them, and they just make the easy step of signing up for an account. Like, that's such a nice little ROI for relatively low effort. And it's so repeatable for a lot of businesses.
Well, that's the big thing right now too, right? Is with intent and who's going to figure out the right way to like score the intent for these long tail keywords. So are you doing anything, Joe, in terms of like identifying what are your value intent in terms of keywords when you're looking at, that volume?
Yeah, we try to, and like you do your best, right? When it comes to the longer tail. For names, though, it's easy because for names, we want the landing page to be the person's name, and then from there, because it's so hard to determine intent, we kind of have dueling CTAs. Like, are you an influencer? We kind of walk them through that path. Are you a brand? Give us your credit card, and so we go that route. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting that people are starting to get a little bit more intelligent too with keyword research. I think, with me, now that I'm dealing with smaller brands for the most part, it's interesting that I'm educating them on the value of long tail keywords, right? So it's like, I want to rank for Orange County real estate. I was like, well, that's a lovely pipe dream that you have, but that's not going to happen for you anytime in the next like 10 or 15 years. You're just not big enough. But it is interesting to say like, well, that might get 2,000 searches a month. Well, we can make up for that with all of these long tail keywords, and we could rank for them very, very easily, and you'd still get the same amount of traffic, and it would probably convert at a higher rate too. So like, why wouldn't you want to do that? And so some of that kind of education comes down to the fact of like, well, we can pull data for all of this stuff and really do a gap analysis on where you rank, where your competitors rank, and get all of that data in very, very quickly, and really be able to hone in on, what are your competitors ranking for that are long tail, and what can we, absolutely take from them as far as market share is concerned. And I find that a lot of people are really into that sort of model of thinking, and it makes things a lot easier because all they have to really do is derive content for it, and post it up on their site most of the time. So, for that, it makes my life a lot easier, and they see wins really easy. But, being able to have that data is really one of the most important factors that I've seen, at least in my business. But, we've also got some of our friends that are at large organizations that need to get hundreds of thousands of keywords. We've got one of our friends, Jeff, over at a real estate company. Yeah. And so it's like, wow, I mean, 100,000 keywords, like, what are you, like, I can't even imagine dealing with that, first of all. Like, that's insane. but like, that's what you have to do. Like, you really have to prepare yourself to be able to do those sort of data pools. And by the way, if you can do it and you can kind of like mirror up everything to what you need, like, that gives you a clear advantage to your competition, like absolutely clear, because they're probably floundering trying to figure out how to get all of this stuff, or they'll completely miss the fact that you're going after this subset of keywords that are so long tail or so low volume that, no one would ever think about going after them. So there's a ton of value in that stuff. And I think that us as search marketers, we have to get a little bit more intelligent to find that stuff and to actually implement it.
I bet that's just his seed list too. Like 100,000, like, he's looking at like mid-sized and large cities, real estate. Yeah. That's 100,000 right there.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah, imagine some small podunk town or something that's in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska.
That's the interesting thing too when you're talking real estate is like you've got the double-edged sword of like you're dealing with local, right? So you've got to nail your actual location and you have a certain kind of, perimeter that you can work with there. And then you're using content to kind of expand beyond that. And so going back to Joe's point about personalization, it's like you've got to know that zip code, but then it's like how can you actually penetrate? Plus when you're dealing with a smaller customer, Jim, versus going against the big guys. It's like,
Right.
you have to be really smart when you're going against someone who has the SEO equity that it's going to be a challenge to get to them in the first place.
Yep. Or even like where we're at. Well, Joe's in a different area, but not too far from me. But like this is technically Phoenix. So you could have Phoenix real estate, but that doesn't necessarily mean my area. And then you could say North Phoenix, which gets you a little bit closer. And then you could say Desert Ridge, which is the area, or down to like the actual home place, which is Fireside. So, I mean, there's all of these different layers to get down to that micro level of locality. But I mean, how would you know all of that, first of all? And then two, how are you going to find out who's ranking for all of that stuff? Is it the same competitor? Is he just going after, North Phoenix? Those are all things that, if you were able to get hyper local, like it would be insane because you could just dominate everyone. Absolutely crazy.
Another interesting thing too is like the more data you're collecting, the quicker you could spot the trends faster. And
Yeah.
I know we're gonna talk about entity search in a little bit, but like with the recent updates and whatnot. But even just knowing when there's more entities that are being injected into the results as a whole, you're saying like real estate. Maybe they start doing a knowledge graph on cities of a certain size, or maybe they start injecting videos at a certain point. Like, if you're just looking at a little bit of data, you don't have enough of that feel where I know like some of our friends, I had a call with one of them yesterday on something like this, where they're able to spot search trends now just by virtue of their tracking so much crap. They're saying like, here was a change, it hasn't been written about yet, but this was modified. Now I know the industry's in an uproar about, oh, well, they're not allowing for the dual pages where if you are in the knowledge graph on the top panel and you recently had a duplicated basic organic result, you lose duplication. Now, like I guess a new update for 2 days ago was, well, if you're on the right rail knowledge panel, you are allowed to have the duplicated URL. How would you know that unless you're looking at a mass amount of data and can see the consistency throughout? Like I don't know what an enterprise does if they're not tracking that, because this is such a severe disadvantage. You can't even determine like what should my planning be, what should my proposal be for the board to overcome or to go at an advantage further. You don't even know. You're just flying blind.
Well, and the other thing too is to be able to quantify the value of all of that too, right? So like, if I was going to play like devil's advocate, I would go up to my boss and say, hey, look, like I'm thinking about getting AuthorityLabs. This is like one of the things that I want to do. And he'd be like, okay, well, how much is it? And I'd say X amount of dollars, but this is what we plan on doing with it. And if I could tell them, I could give you the ROI modeling for every single long tail keyword that we could possibly ever want and target, and tell you how much that's worth. Like that to me is gold. And for me, I mean, I don't know anyone else, and probably there will be people who are listening to this and they can find it as a familiar, unfortunate circumstance, which is with GoDaddy, everything had to boil down to dollars. I couldn't get a single thing done unless I told them that whatever it was that I was doing equaled a certain dollar amount. And that's not stupid on their part. I think it's very smart. It was hindering in some cases, especially dealing with SEO, because it's not like dollar to dollar. Sometimes there has to be a little bit of mystery involved in it. But when I could put a dollar amount to a project, it was almost certainly going to be done very, very quickly because the dollar amount was always high. And so being able to do that and to actively, portray how much your job or your team is worth, like that's, to me, it was invaluable. So, it's just one of those things where people have to figure out what works for their organization, but having the data, I think, is probably the most critical piece, right? Otherwise, you're
Right,
just
blending it, you think about like in terms of all these other sources of data, like what's connected to your internal system, but also just any sort of ad data, right? So if you're blending your organic SERPs with, where your bids and going back to keywords, if you're getting a certain amount of revenue from all these tiny little bites across, the whole landscape, then you can invest so much more in the long tail. And then to Joe's point, maybe it's not worth it to even invest on bids on your ad spend for the head.
yeah. Yeah, but that would assume that the PPC and the SEO team aren't siloed, which they normally are.
I just think back to an enterprise working with, let's say hundreds of thousands of pages, if not millions of pages, seeing which page templates start ranking or stop ranking. That's just one of those other things that's fairly handy, being able to see that much data coming through. Not even so much like, hey, an algorithmic change exists where it's injecting more, knowledge graph videos, etc. But along the lines of like, for whatever reason, they don't like this style template that you've been serving up, 50,000 times. It's like real estate. Like maybe they have a city page versus a listing page, and something happened where the city page is now seen as less authoritative. Being able to see that it's not a fluke on a page-by-page basis allows you to say, something's wrong with the template, let's start tweaking the template and see if it has an immediate effect. And now that you can actually do real-time SEO, where you can go, you can make some changes, run a force a fetch and render to see what the positional change is, that's fairly fucking handy.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. But let's just call it what Google's doing. They're suppressing organic results.
Well, I know they are. That's why I called it influencer agency.
So funny. Well, let's talk about the recent updates with Google. I think it's interesting, I guess, if that's what you want to call it.
The people that I see complaining the most about it are enterprises, without a doubt, because they benefited from having like all of their FAQ existing in the knowledge graph and then having an additional link to the FAQ. Now suddenly the one of those sources is disappearing, and usually it tends to be the organic piece. So now, because Google's unstated mission is to keep people on Google, now I'm going to answer your question by sending you deeper into Google itself.
Yeah.
While that enterprise may be still getting some of that benefit, they just can't attribute it anymore, and that's hard. I try to think, like, what else could you do? One of the recommendations I had was like, okay, well, have your pages specifically with all the schema markup, and then create near duplicated pages that are just specific for organic search that don't have any of the schema markup. Does that get you back? If you're authoritative of a domain, you could play that little experiment and see if you can pop out. And if you can, you should probably run with that for a long time, especially if you're throwing it on like a subdomain. You might be able to get away with it.
And I think it's interesting too. I mean, I haven't really dug into the data really that much, but it would be interesting to see what types of enterprise organizations are seeing problems. Like, like an example, like a huge example would be like Amazon versus, maybe Hewlett Packard or something. You know what I mean? Something where it's like an extreme like e-commerce platform versus like just a really well-known brand. Or Nike would be like another really good example of that too, right? Like Nike is great, but it doesn't, I mean, it sells a lot.
They're not trying to sell a specific product. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I just wonder how it handles that. It would be really interesting to find out.
So a couple of the examples that I know of, just seeing the stuff that's not showing up in Citrix reporting, is large B2B CRM companies. They've had some issues, as well as giant coupon sites. And so that you can't get any more different than that. It's like you got B2C, you got B2B, but both what was disappearing was just the stuff that was just heavily marked up in schema. And so it was benefiting temporarily until it got cut down. What's the phrase Aaron Wall coined? I think it's embrace, extend, extinguish. And that's kind of like Google's philosophy. They embrace an open standard, get everyone to adopt it, and then just cut their knees out.
Yeah.
Well, because the other part of this too is you have to think about it both from the desktop and mobile standpoint, right? Like this is all desktop stuff that's happening. So it makes sense that a lot of B2Bs would be impacted because of the way their sales cycle is. Like, with AuthorityLabs and a few of the other, SaaS companies that I'm working with, this idea of that the sales cycle all goes through the desktop. Like people aren't using their mobile phone to purchase software.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's really interesting to see how this is going to impact, especially for, to your point, enterprises with a ton of domains that they're working with or a ton of URLs that they're working with, how like that specific audience and the way they're being searched is being impacted by these changes, because it takes a longer time anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they handle all of this for sure. I mean, I don't think that Google's done tweaking it either, to be honest with you. It seems like this is kind of like I don't want to say like a half-baked idea, but I think they really, they pissed off a lot of people for sure. But it'll be interesting. And, and the funny thing is too, is like, I told a couple people this too. I was like, at some point in time, Google's just going to go that one step too far, and they're just going to piss all of their users off, and they're just going to hate it. And eventually it'll just go to Bing. I mean, I would love to see that. I mean, you've got the founders that are gone now. They're just like taking their cash and running, and you've got all of these weird changes coming up. Like it just, I don't know. It's just,
do you believe that though? I mean, do you think DuckDuckGo is ever going to actually have a market share?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think Microsoft will probably win the game, would be my guess.
I could see Bing getting more market share, but I don't see a substantive, outcome until there's like DOJ, FTC rulings.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think Microsoft is smart. They're playing the long game, and they're usually really, really good at that. But like, if you take a look at like a lot of the stuff that Google does, they fail miserably on almost 90% of it. Like
they just launched a new TikTok competitor.
Did they? Yeah, it's the same thing they do. Like I remember when I was at GoDaddy, and people we were just about to go public, and people were freaking out that Google just said that, oh yeah, we're going to start selling domain names, and it was like, oh god, like all of the stock that I was going to get is just worthless at this point. I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is so bad, and they failed.
With Amazon, right?
They failed miserably. Yeah, they all failed miserably.
Yeah.
It's because
that'll be when Amazon releases their search engine, because obviously they have their e-commerce search engine, but I wonder if they'll ever actually get into the game like with a new competitor, because I don't feel like I've heard anything from Amazon outside of what they're only doing with e-commerce.
I think it's kind of, this is an interesting like brand take, I guess, but like when I think of Google, I think about doing searches. And when I think about Amazon, I think about buying product. And when I think about getting a domain name, I used to think about getting it at GoDaddy. But, it's like these brands get associated with whatever it is that the person is familiar with, purchasing from them. And then they go and they deviate to try to get more market share, or to try to, innovate or whatever, and they wind up flopping on it because people are just like, no, this isn't what I wanted. Like, this is weird. And I think a lot of people get that from Google. Like, Google selling domain names, I would never buy a domain name from Google. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. They're a great search engine, but like, I would never buy a domain from them. And would I use Google Plus? Hell no. I remember when everyone was like, oh, Google Plus, oh my God, this is going to be the next thing. Like, everyone's signing up all these accounts and getting all their stuff and filling it all out and using it. And then they were like, this thing's a piece of shit. I hate using it. And no one uses it. And it's so dumb to have. And then eventually Google's like, oh yeah, you know what? You guys are right. This is a really bad idea. We're just going to pull the plug. And it's like every single time. It's the weirdest thing. And they're so closed door about everything. You can never know exactly what they're doing or what they're planning. If they were at least a little bit open about what they were trying to accomplish, like, I'm sure that they would get the backing of us as search marketers and the general public too, but they're just so walled off. Like, it's just,
well, how do you feel about what they do with the travel industry? Because it's, going back to real estate, or when they start doing these verticals. Yeah, like right now with the aggregators, like that's the industry I feel like they've really messed around with their layouts and with different entities. And you got to think at some point they'll tackle other industries. Do you think they've got travel down yet, or do you think they still have a long ways to go?
I mean, I like Google Flight. It's really cool.
Right?
They've certainly made consistent inroads to travel. I think they're walking a fine line there, because they know if they go too far, then it's obvious antitrust issues. Because then now you're just basically you're disadvantaging all your competitors. That was the big fear when they bought ITA, and they really hurt them on the commissional side of things. I think they backed out on the hotel in order to give them a little bit more cookies on the flight side, but they can come back to the full circle. To your point regarding like Amazon, they have A9. I think all Amazon really has to do is give a competitive bid to Mozilla for the next time they do the default search, and their search scores. I mean, it'll spike, and people will be searching on Amazon. Now, granted, that's just e-commerce stuff, but Amazon also has a really robust ad network, so they can just pop people back out to non-e-commerce stuff. Like, I could see it working. I would have said, they could do a deal with Facebook too, but Facebook's kind of going in that route as well. So, Facebook, you can just go buy a browser, just go do something like that, and you could be a player overnight. I'm sure they've discussed it multiple times.
Yeah. What do we want to talk about next, gentlemen? We've got the Google featured snippet. We've got the updates. Oh, we can say that AuthorityLabs will be showing up at Advanced Search Summit, so that'll be fun.
Yes, we will.
What they end up sponsoring?
Oh, does Garrett know?
Gosh, I feel like I should. I know Lauren was sending out some of the emails.
It'll probably involve wine somehow. Yes. Okay, that's a given.
It's the prospect dinner, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that actually. Right.
I think the people that go to that are in for a treat, and I think is that where the 100-point wine is.
Yeah, we can't divulge any secrets. But I will say though,
an extremely good wine will be served.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get where we're trying to get, we're working hard. I know TJ's been working really hard on trying to get this winery to like open their doors. Luckily, we've got quite a good reputation with them as far as bringing customers and also buying a shit ton of their wine. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if they allow this to happen. I don't know of any time that this has actually happened. They actually just redid. I can't remember. Was it like a $20 million remodel or something like that? It was
a huge remodel, because when we went there last time, it wasn't done.
Yeah, well, they knocked down both of their main buildings and rebuilt the whole thing. And the one looked amazing. And I guess now the second one's redone. So it should be fun. Well, I guess we could just tell you. So
well, we're going to go check it out in a few weeks anyways.
I hate talking about it because I love the winery. So it's Louis Martini. So Louis Martini is one of the oldest wineries in Napa Valley. It's been around forever. They have everything from like a $14, Alexander Valley cab, which is pretty good for the $14, all the way up to their 100-point lot one, which I think, what did I pay for that? Like $350 or something. It was stupid. I cannot wait to drink that thing. But yeah, I mean, their new room that they have there is absolutely stunning. They have a brand new kitchen, and they just redid the other older building that had like this underground area with these huge casks and a Burkle meat slicer that was a $6,000 meat slicer, which is amazing.
That sounds fantastic.
So yeah, so we're hoping that they will open their doors to us. So we've been working with a couple of the people over there, and we've seen them every single time that we've gone into the valley. But yeah, we're gonna see them in a couple of weeks and hopefully have everything nailed down for you guys. But that should be an amazing dinner for sure.
That's awesome. So, what are some of the themes this year that you're seeing in terms of that people are talking about?
A lot about entities. Quite a bit about entities, yeah. Or Fraggles. I mean, Cindy Crum, she'll be there, and she's like the expert on that world. So she'll be talking a lot about entity search.
Yeah, I think we've got Eat. Eat is now important. We've got Lily and Casey talking about that. Yeah,
So
that's
that's
also
one thing that we're doing with Authority Labs that's kind of interesting is we just released this reputation API. I'd be curious to get your guys' take on this. So the idea is you can get review and listing data. So in volume, so being able, I mean, obviously, it's a portion of Eat. It's not, the whole like who's the authors who are writing the content, but,
right.
actually developing your reviews and whatnot across all the different review sites. What value do you think could you see an enterprise using for something like that off the top of your head in terms of being able to look at their reputation on, real estate or legal or
I mean, I can tell you from my GoDaddy days. I mean, it wasn't something that was directly under me, but GoDaddy was always trying to look up sentiment and look up what was going on. They at one point in time purchased Bizarre Voice for the on-site stuff, which was not cheap, and it was really interesting to get the feedback from some of these products. It wasn't all necessarily good. Some of it was actually pretty damning. But like, I think if I was a CEO or a CMO and I kind of wanted to figure out what people thought of my products and services, like I think that having the ability to pull all that data from everywhere would be extremely valuable. You'd be able to figure out, like I can tell you with GoDaddy, one of the major complaints that they had was they rolled out a new version of their website builder program, and the new version was SEO friendly. But when you went from the old version to the new version, it changed all of the URLs to be SEO friendly. But then there wasn't a 301 redirect in place, so all of those old URLs just kind of died. And so there was a massive amount of what I would call feedback from people. And the feedback was not good. It was like, I lost all of my traffic. I don't know what's going on. My rankings are gone. Like everything's like the sky is falling essentially. And it was because the developers didn't understand that they needed to put a 301 redirect in place from the old URLs to the new URLs. And so it took months for them to build that feature into the system. And so, having and luckily we had Bizarre Voice at the time, because there's no other way to get it other than the social feedback. But it was really interesting that people were pissed, and it was the first line of defense for us to understand that there was a problem, outside of like some of the calls. But it was a lot of feedback because there was constantly like monitoring of internal feedback through various systems that they had there. But yeah, I could totally see that as something super valuable for someone who wants to be vigilant about what's going on outside of the actual office, right?
So I was talking about EAT, and I had to look this up the other day. I was talking about EAT in presentations back in 2013. And the only reason I was talking about it then was that's when it first started making an appearance in the quality guidelines. The reason we cared about it, we're talking about it then, is I was a shady kind of guy. And so I was hiring quality raters to work with us. And so we wanted, because we wanted to see, like, how are you, not to influence them, just to watch them. Basically, I'll pay you the same amount you're getting paid just to do your work from my office, and we could watch what you're doing. And so we're saying, like, how are you interacting with the site? How are you making your decisions? And like, there's a lot of, you could distill it a lot down to just basic user signals. So like, you could just pair various click-through rates, dwell, that type of user data from analytics with the massive amounts of rank tracking data to see, does your usage lag or lead on the ranking changes? And what we found, at least fairly recently, was it leads. It's like the more that you're able to provide a better user experience, at least mathematically, and of course that can always be gamed, your rankings can improve. But you're not going to know that unless you're looking at all the data and pulling it all and smashing it all together in a pretty dashboard. Now, that could change. And if it changes tomorrow, the only way you would know is if you had the ranking data and you have the corresponding usage data. Maybe now all of a sudden it's, they overweight something on links. I'm like, well, shit, if I don't have the link data in there to match the ranking used,
Yeah.
You have to pull the data at a large scale.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think Marty.
You're wrong.
Well, all right then.
And that's a wrap.
And we're good. No, but like, Marty Weintraub from Ainclear has talked in the past about how to artificially generate search traffic based off of, social. So, engineering social to create that traffic. So, I mean, if theoretically, if you could grab the data in almost real time, like you could almost see yourself, manipulating the search results by doing all of that stuff. And
absolutely. So you bring up a really good point. Yeah. The frequency of pulling that ranking data gets a lot more important at that point, because then you can correspond it to, here's when the social campaign spiked and then came back down. Here's the query spiking and going down, like overlap, and then here's the rankings afterwards. Right. Because like we'll see a big pop in rankings usually when we do like a big emailer, because a lot of the people that get their email, like hundreds of thousands of people, they're not just clicking the link, they're going to Google and looking for it. And then after they do that enough times and finding the link, then our rankings go back up. And after the campaign's dead, then it's kind of drifts back down.
Right.
So, absolutely.
Yeah. So seeing stuff like that, I think, is really, really important, at least from the testing phase. I mean, look, when you're running your own agency, you don't really have time to like do all these fun tests and stuff. It's very, very challenging and difficult to find the time to do it. But what is interesting though is if you're in an enterprise market and you have a couple spare minutes, like it wouldn't be that difficult to set these tests up and to really, funnel traffic through all of it and figure out what's going on with, your rankings when that stuff happens. So like, to me, I would totally be advantageous. I know we have our other friend, William Sears over at Slick Deals, that constantly tries to, not game the system, but is adamant.
It's a competitive market. So
He's adamant about like monitoring all of this stuff, like way past what I would consider normal. But he's very, very good at it, and trying to get these massive data points down to like this tiny little window that's got the perfect data that you were looking for.
That's actually what he's going to be talking about in Napa.
Yeah.
He's going to be talking about pulling in all these big data sets, making sense of them, and then making decisions based on it, and then potentially forecasting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sit on that one.
That's exciting. The whole forecasting, like the idea of, what people are doing with like predictive sort of potential machine learning once you have these large, massive data sets, like the potential of that in the next 5 years is going to be really interesting in terms of like, the ROI and saving yourself money. It's like, just feed it into the system and the system will tell you what to do. Bye-bye SEO. SEO is obsolete, right?
Long live SEO.
Long live SEO. But but that's cool with the influencer, Joe. The idea of tying the influencer performance to SEO in terms of the EAT factors. Like, have there been any major case studies done in terms of, obviously there's, the bottom line of generating sales for a company, but like kind of the long-term sort of value to SEO that having influencer campaigns has?
I don't know that anyone's actually done a case study, and I know we certainly haven't. Usually, like when we talk about it, it's just part of the sales pitch, or that's part of the conversation. Like, here's one thing you could do, but I usually will like do it as like a sweetener, because you could have, like you're running like a big campaign. You basically say, have the person kick off, do a search, find the page, click, do the following action, and then do the post. So you're getting all that stuff basically for free. So it's like it's just part of the process.
That's smart. That's real smart, because it's natural. Like it does happen, and whether you can measure that, directly. So that'll be interesting as you develop those tools to be able to measure all of those like hit points over the course of a campaign.
Yeah, I guess we're just going to have to partner with AuthorityLabs to make it happen.
No, I guess so. Cool.
I know a dinner that you guys could join.
Good wine.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd be interested to see what they serve. I guess we get to choose.
The finest box.
No, I don't think Louis Martini's got a box. Interesting story about that.
They do, but it comes with 12 bottles in it.
Yeah, that's true. I went there, this is probably like 15 years ago or so, and they had a garage sale, which I was like, garage sale? Sure, I'll buy some stuff. And they had a bottle of 1973 Cabernet Sauvignon, and they had a pallet of it that was just sitting there, and they were just trying to offload it as quickly as possible. And I bought one of the bottles, and I was like, holy shit, this is old. And this is like back in like 2000s. So like, imagine it's already like old as hell. And it was perfect. Like one of the greatest wines I've ever had. And unfortunately, there's no way of getting any more of it, which is always like the downfall. I'm so pissed about that. I just ran into that problem the other day. I bought some James Cole, and they don't have any more.
Well, it's like reading a book. You can never experience the same thing again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or those magic bottles that me and Joe keep opening.
It's periodic. It's just because of the volume of bottles that we open that we had.
That's true. I see your point now. We've got.
I hope that we hit a couple more of those. I hope that we have wine left over, even though we're probably not going to have it left over from the conference. Just in case.
I mean, we bought a barrel, so you'd think that there'd be enough.
Yeah, with the rate the tickets are coming in, I think we're going to run out of wine.
That might be true too.
That's exciting.
Cool. Let's talk about too. The last thing on our menu is AuthorityLabs running their specials. So Garrett, you want to tell everyone exactly what they can get?
Yeah. So really exciting. Just with all these kind of Google SERP data that we offer, wanting people to give it a chance to try it out, because like the appeal is the volume and its scale. And if you're an advanced data analyst or major enterprise and you need a lot of keywords, basically we have this deal where it's 100K keywords that you can pull your Google SERP data from for free. Basically you just go over to authoritylabs.com/API. We have a form there. You just mention Jim Christian in your form contact form, and we can set you up to give the API a try, pull that data and see, because the big thing is its accuracy. It's flexible, so you can use as much or as little of it as you want at the pace that you need. If you want to do daily, you want to do weekly, you do whatever. But try it out. 100K keywords. Let us know. Lauren will give you a call. We'll get in touch. We'll sit down for a conversation. Try to figure out what you're trying to do, and make sure that you can do it with the data there.
Yeah, and I think it's a really cool thing. I mean, some people, they probably think 100,000 keywords, like I couldn't possibly get that much. But, when you're talking about, multiple data sets and you're talking about, the frequency and all that stuff, 100,000 goes by real quick. I can tell you personally. Yeah. So, that's a great deal. And obviously, we're friends with AuthorityLabs and love the product and think that it definitely has amazing potential to grow even further than where it's at today. So yeah, hopefully everyone can go check it out. I know Joe and I will probably run some tests in the future, especially with the influencer stuff. But yeah, no, thanks. It's been great, obviously, having this discussion today. So I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in Napa. Hopefully, couple months? Not far. Yeah. So great. Well, thanks, Garrett. We appreciate it. Joe, I will see you soon. And goodbye.